welcome class. I'll try not to keep everyone waiting for too long. We're still missing a lot of people, so I'm hoping they will be joining us as soon as possible. But we have some investors and some VCs here, so let's make good use of their time. So we'll jump in as usual with our guest speakers. I leave the floor to Ece, and I will jump in from time to time with some questions, but I get to enjoy it in the background. Here you go, Ece.
Thank you, Hocam. So this is the last session of guest speakers for this term, and I would like to thank Selma and Polat to join us because this is, I think, combining two of them, two sides of VC is a very rare occasion. So I think this will be a very interesting topic for you all. I don't want to interfere a lot, so I would like to start with knowing first Selma and then Polat. It would be great if you can tell us about yourself, about your background. Since this is a class, it may be, you know, of course we will focus on the investor side, but also your professional life and education life could, you know, make a spark and maybe it may affect their decisions. So we would love to hear about your background and what you're doing now. Then we will continue with the questions and our main topic. Selma, floor is yours.
Okay, thank you so much. It's a pleasure for me to be here with you, Adil Hocam and Ece, and also our prominent investor, Polat Bey. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I hope this class will be helpful for the listeners, students. And me, myself, I am Selma Bahçıvanoğlu. I studied international relations and I done my master's degree on that field, but later on I started to work for İTÜ Çekirdek and Innogate. It was under Istanbul Technical University's Technopark, and I managed this program for about 9 years. Later on, I started to work for Simya. Now I'm going to tell you more about. I've been with technology startups for about 10 years. I'm not an engineer, but I am dominated by 900% with engineers, and I'm very helpful. I feel myself very lucky to have startups to scale in Turkey and abroad. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. I have the same feeling, not being an engineer, but being surrounded by engineers. You get used to it at a point. I think we cannot be without them. Polat, could we hear a bit about your background and what
Absolutely.
You're doing now?
Thank you very much for having me, number one. Thank you very much, Adil Hocam, and thank you, Ece, for facilitating this meeting. My background was always in finance. My career was in finance, banking, and real estate. And I'm very actually new to VC investments for the last 4 years, I would say. Basically, you know, there's a big boom in the world and in Turkey in VC investments, and you cannot know every field. So I chose the route of going through funds, and that's how we actually met with, as well as Simya and 212. We actually invested in 212 first and then went into Simya, and because Simya provides something very unique. It's pre-seed, you know, this is something that we absolutely feel dark in the room with lights off, you know, and eyes closed, so you don't know what you're doing. So it's best to go hand in hand with people who are professionals in the field. And that's how we got together. And I'm very happy to be with all of you today. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have for our point of view. Thank you.
No, that's great, Dilo. I'm looking forward to hear about the background of investing in VCs because, you know, when we are talking from the startup perspective, we have only two players, you know, the startups and the venture capital or the angel investor. But even for me, you know, it took a while until I realized that there are some other people investing in these VCs. So it will be good to see the whole picture and understand your motives. Selma has a presentation about more the basics. So we can start with that and then continue with the questions.
Okay. I have a small presentation about Simya and also how this investment cycle works. So we are an international accelerator fund. We are for B2B and early stage startups. This is, I think, our unique secret is to help to startups to scale globally. This is something very important for us. And our investment process is very fast and transparent. Like when we first meet a startup, our investment process is not taking more than 2 months. So this is also an important thing. We offer mentorship, network support, and also international scale opportunity with our exclusive partnership with Alchemist Accelerator. They are based in San Francisco and Munich, and they basically have B2B startups to accelerate their businesses in United States or in Europe. So we have an exclusive partnership with them. We choose startups here with my partner Çağdaş, and we introduce them to Alchemist. And if Alchemist accepts them to their international batch, we invest in them. We are powered by 212. 212 is one of the most institutionalized and successful VC in Turkey. Their first portfolio, the companies from their first portfolio is like Insider and EasyCo. And also from their second, they have unicorn candidates like Sokradar and like Trio Mobile. And in order to be a GSF, Girişim Sermayesi Yatırım Fonu in Turkey, you need to have a asset management company, and Neo Portfolio is here to help us for the regulations related to SPK. So we are powered by 212 Alchemist Accelerator and Neo Portfolio. Sorry. Sorry. This is our management team, me, Selma, as being the managing director. As I told you before, I have experience in Innogate and İTÜ Çekirdek before. I worked with thousands of startups during İTÜ Çekirdek. It was an incubator chosen many times as the first 5 global incubators list. And Innogate was a program for international acceleration for scale-ups. This is how I met Çağdaş, because Çağdaş, in his previous experience when he was managing Logiva, he was co-founder of Logiva before, where we met with Çağdaş there. They participated our third batch, Innogate's third batch, and he himself being an experienced entrepreneur for about 25 years. Now he's a partner of Simya. So I'm coming from a managerial background. I started with a lot of startups before, and Çağdaş, as being himself an entrepreneur, we are managing Simya with a more pro-startup approach, because we are sitting at the same table with the founders we are investing in. So these are our investors, and Gülman Group is also among our prominent investors. The investors you see here is like the outcome of a very big study, because we have a funnel of investors before we are reaching to them, and we go them and tell about our investment strategy, and then you should be very crystal clear about your investment strategy. We tell them that we are going to have that return in time, and we are in a way getting their support with a very crystal clear strategy. So startup investment, I put here a startup life cycle. When we are considering the pre-seed or seed startup, what we are trying to do is they are early stage and their maturity level is a kind of low. When we are talking about pre-seed startups, we are talking about concepts and ideas of a business mode idea. When we are talking about seed startups, this is how when we invest in startups, actually in Simya, we are talking about MVPs, prototypes. Startups can start to negotiate with corporates. They start to have pilot studies, and they kind of start to have a generating a kind of revenue. So after Series A, we are talking about product market fit. Because they started to sell in Turkey or in local market. They are testing their products in local market. For Series B rounds, they want to have investment for their international growth. For example, they started to sell in Turkey. They would like to maybe an operation in Dubai or in United States or in United Kingdom. So they come to us and ask for another round. For going public, a startup need to have diverse income streams. So I put also some kind of typical raise and also the typical valuation for that kind of round. For example, for Simya, we are investing in that stage exactly. We are looking for valuations starting 3 to like 8 to 9. So this is our strategy. So we are going to our investors and telling that we are going to invest in startups in that amount and in that valuation. So why a startup needs funding? Growth is like the very important answer to every question. A startup needs to complete its product development, needs to have a marketing and advertising in Turkey and abroad, needs to have a kind of marketing machine, and also needs to have or acquire talent. This is an important thing that a startup needs to struggle nowadays, talent. So because you are starting with 1 or 2 founders when you start your business, and you need to convince other people to have the same dream with you. So talent acquisition is another problem that startups having. So they go and apply for investment. And for operation and expansion, as we talked before, for example, you are starting locally and you would like to go globally. So you go to investors and ask for the investment. Bootstrapping is a kind of strategy that startup can have. For example, they use their own resources, don't go any investments, and they would like to go or ask for investment when their shares are more valued. So this is something I respect much, but when you are having that strategy as an entrepreneur, you need to consider the timing. You shouldn't be late in the market. Government grants is another opportunity that entrepreneurs can go and apply. There are a lot of government grants in Turkey, but I consider them as they need that government grants for completing their R&D. So depending on their location or industry, they can apply for government grants. Friends, family, and fools, these are the first circle that believe in your business idea. And you could ask for your friends or family members to ask in your startup. Crowdfunding is a very important terminology that appeared in 2 or 3 years in Turkey because there was no regulation before that time. So this is involving a large number of people, especially it is for B2C startups. And there is a platform, this crowdfunding managers are funding their platform according to the regulation, and they introduce B2C startups through that platform, and you as a member apply to that platform in order to invest the startup you need to believe in. And small business loans, these are like the bank or other financial institutions that you can go and apply and get some loans according to interest rates. So these are the funding, different kind of funding methodologies. And angel investors and venture capitalists are the things we are going to talk deep about. Angel investors are the wealthy individuals, have a wide range of network, invest in your startup in exchange for your equity. And venture capitalists, these are the firms that like VC or 212 or Revo, invest in startups with high potential in exchange for equity. So what are the differences between them? Investment stage matters. Angel investors usually invest in early stage startups, but venture capitalists are looking for more mature ones. In terms of risk tolerance, angel investors are more riskier, are investing in more riskier businesses because they believe in the idea or the skills of the entrepreneur. But we are looking for more proven business and we are looking for more financial success of the startup we are investing in. So we took much more lower risks. In terms of management role, angel investors like becoming the member of the team. They work closely with the founder and directly intervene in the management of the business, but we are having more distant management role. We usually monitor. We are not waiting for the startup to be unsuccessful in the end, but we are like more monitoring the startup. We would like him or her to be swimming in that ocean, to have the skills to swim on that ocean. So we are monitoring, not intervening. So in terms of exit strategies, angel investors, for example, have $1 million and investing that 1 million to 10 startups, but looking for these short-term exits. In 2 or 3 years, he or she would like to take the money they are investing in startups, but we operate with a longer-term investment plan with a very high growth potential, and we are looking for more returns. Like we are in that startup in 5 or 7 or even in 10 years. So startup investment is risky. You need to consider VCs or angel investors are not like traditional investors. Their strategy is not going through the profit returns, is not to have profit returns. Instead, their basic strategy is to have return with increase in their valuation of the shares they are investing. So it is very different from the traditional investors. For example, I will get 3% from a startup with $1 million valuation. But when I exit from that startup, this 1 million valuation will become 100 million valuation or 10 million valuation. So we are looking for that kind of return because all of the startups you would like to invest in, you will see in their financials, they are going to close the year with a loss. So the startups has very intangible assets, has no regular income stream, and operates in very high risk market condition. Since they are scaling, they cannot have any profit. So what are we investing? What are we expecting in investing that kind of risky businesses? We are waiting for profitable returns. We are waiting for the exits, successful exits, and we are waiting for the market opportunity. Our motivation is to invest in future technologies. So this is a very big motivation. Do you have any questions until that?
You mentioned profits and returns. Can you give us an idea about what type of returns can be expected from VCs?
Returns like these are like the returns of the increase in the valuation of the startups. For example, when you are investing in a startup with a 1 million valuation and you get 10% of it, your 10% in time maybe become like $10 million. So this is the basic motivation to invest in a startup.
I was kind of thinking, well, maybe we should ask Polat this.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking of the people that put money into you. I have some numbers that I mentioned in class. I want to give the students a chance to see whether the numbers I mention are in line with what is out there in the market.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Okay, thank you. Well, you know, I don't want to say this number for specifically for Simya because we're just a new investor and we're just in the beginning of the investment cycle. But in general terms, in the universe of all the funds that we have invested in, so far on paper, everything looks profitable. But the general, you know, understanding globally, as far as I understand, is there may be a 50% loss. And 30% of this, of the total 100, might come back with 1 multiple. And the remaining 15 to 20%, the sky is the limit. You never know. Because, you know, if you exit Getir, for example, now, it's a very good investment for initial investors. But if you, perhaps down the line, it may not be the same thing. We will not know. It's yet to be found out, you know, because the fund that we invested in Getir, is closed for perhaps 7 years, and it's only been 4 so far for me. So I don't know what's going to happen for the next 3 years. But generally, the understanding is these are risky investments, and there are no guarantees. And this is not for the faint-hearted. You know, it's not something that brick and mortar investment could give you the safety, of course. But that's why we call them venture capital.
Yeah. So as being an investor, you need to think about a portfolio. You shouldn't just invest in one startup and wait for the return. You should create your own portfolio. For example, you invested in 15 startups. You should know that 5 of them will be like bringing no return, and other 5 will bring like 3 or 4 return. Access. When we talk about investors, we talk with exits. With in return, and one of them will bring maybe 10x. So you are looking for that 10x. You need to create a kind of portfolio, and you need to increase your chances of getting that 10x startup. So how we select the startup? As a VC, we have a deal sourcing strategy. We have partnership with incubators, technoparks in Turkey who are in relationship with startups. Since we are an early stage startups, we attend a lot of demo days. A lot of incubator is asking for our mentorship. So we are trying to support a lot of startups in the ecosystem. But again, we are looking for the ones who are not even attending that incubators or not attending that demo days. So we are kind of having a marketing strategy. We are doing our community outreaches and wait for the applications of that startups who even don't go to any incubators in Turkey. And we are looking for building a network and very qualified deal flow. So this is a very high effort business in order to get that successful startups, in order to have a very successful deal sourcing in the VC ecosystem. So this is the rule. When we reach 100 startup, we know that we are going to deep dive. We are going to ask more about their financials. We are going to have a due diligence process with 10 startups, and we are going to invest only one of them. So 60% of them will be equal to the investment in return, and 30% will be 10x in returns, and only 3% will have 20x in returns. So this is a very risky one. When we are evaluating the startups, we use different kind of methods, but these are the common questions we ask to ourselves. As partner, Çağdaş and I are looking for the very eligible and very skilled entrepreneurs who are coachable and who like pivots when there is needed. So the team is very important for us, but these are the other questions we are looking for. For example, are there really large and growing markets like the startup is mentioning? So is the market very easy and accessible? In terms of method, we look for, does the startup have a very strong and experienced management team? Can he or she acquire new ones, new talents? In terms of market, we are looking for, is the startup founder mentioning about the investment amount? Is it very in line with the objectives he or she have? Sometimes startups are looking for example, $2.5 million dollars investment. This is a very high in terms of the Turkish ecosystem. This 2.5 million dollars, very high in terms of Turkey's situation nowadays. But sometimes we are looking deep in their financials, and we see that maybe with 1.5 million USD, they can also have that kind of objectives. So you need to work on the objectives and you need to go deeply about their financials. Momentum, does the startup has a very sustainable business model? Can it generate revenue and eventually profit? And for money, does it have any traction in Turkey? This is very important for us because we are looking for test local, go global startups. So this is the question we are asking. And also the Alchemist Accelerator is also looking for that kind of startups who tested their products or services locally. So these are the questions. This is a very brief investment process. First of all, we find that startup or a startup can apply to us. We have a preliminary interview. After that interview, the first expression is always matters, but after that first meeting, we have second, third, or even fourth meeting with the teams. And after that, we look into their financials. This is the due diligence process. And after that, we come to a decision, investment decision, and we send our term sheets and also SSA and SHA, this kind of other agreements that we are asking to startups. How we decide on the valuation, I can easily say there is no single answer to that. But an investor should ask himself or herself to this question: how much I invest to that startup and how much can I lose? So you should have, as I told you, a portfolio. So you shouldn't invest all your saving to one startup. So you should, in a way, give that decision to yourself, like how much can I invest and how much can I lose? What is my exit strategy from that opportunity? Can I trust the team? Can this business go bigger as they are mentioning? You need to look for the other competitors in the market, because usually the startups can pitch that they are like the ones in the market. You need to look for other competitors and you need to evaluate that startup accordingly. And these should be the questions an investor is asking himself. And when not to invest in startup, sometimes there are some wrong assumptions in the market size. For example, startup is saying that market I'm targeting is like $1 billion market, but you are looking, when you are go deep in the due diligence process, you see that the market is not that big. And sometimes the product and service is not clear. For example, the startup is saying that I started with a textile industry and have another service for mobility sector and another one for edtech. So this is a very complicated thing. It should be very crystal clear about the sectors he or she would like to target. And unrealistic business model is another thing. For example, everybody will buy my product, or every company needed that product. So he or she should have a very clear business model. And These are the common mistakes that entrepreneurs are having when searching for investment. They should be very prepared for the investment process and then look for the investment and reach to the investors they are targeting. And this organized cap table, the cap table is a kind of document that is showing the shareholders and showing the what shareholders have what kind of percentage in that startup. For example, we see that a lot of names, 20 or 25 names in the cap table, and we are asking them, is this person very related to your business? Is this an angel investor? And the founder cannot give an exact answer. So it is a bit disorganized in terms of investing a startup. So sometimes startups fall in love with their business plan and doesn't consider pivoting. So it is also a factor that they cannot get investment. Sometimes they don't have any team. This is very important. The team is very, very important when we are considering the early stage startups. And these are the common mistakes. And I put CB Insights survey result here. For example, what are the leading reasons that startups fail? 38% is run out of cash or fail to raise capital. So raising capital in the very right time and from a very right investor is very important for the businesses to continue to scale. So I wish every startups to have luck in their investment search, and we are here to help them. And I put also some important rounds in Turkey. That is, we already heard a lot of good news in the last 5 years. So these are the notable exits from Turkey. And I also put the pre-seed, seed, and scale-ups and growth stage VCs in Turkey. The red ones, the circled red ones, are raising their third fund in Turkey. So the VC ecosystem in Turkey is growing and very having very fertile days nowadays. So it's very important to see that. So this is my end of the presentation.
Thanks a lot, Selma. Alpe has a question, but before that, I will switch to Polat with a few questions and then come back to VC side. Maybe we will have more questions then. So first of all, Polat, I know that you're one of the humblest investors, and to the class, there are not many humble investors around. So you introduced yourself very briefly, but I think that would be great if you can share a little bit more about what you have been investing on, not the numbers, but the funds, the companies. That would be great to hear a little bit more about them.
Absolutely. I'm just trying to fix the view here. I did something wrong. I can't see you guys.
I think I put you into the forefront.
Oh, yes. Okay, that's what it is. I thought I did something. Okay, fine, no problem. All right. First of all, thank you very much again. By the way, the presentation was excellent, Salman. It was really helpful to understand the process. And, like you mentioned, there are many variables for some investments not to go ahead and not go well. But that's why mainly we invest in VC funds, because you have to understand we made our money in different businesses than VCs. Before there was no VCs around the universe. We made money from real estate. So our business is completely different than what you do day to day. So there is no way, no matter what kind of degree or experience I have, that I can invest in businesses that I don't know what they exactly do. Even if they tell me, I wouldn't understand the dynamics. So it is very difficult for an angel investor even to risk capital. I don't care how rich they are. It's very difficult to understand what goes through the team's head day to day because they have a lot of hurdles. So this is my preference, is to always go through funds. Of course, there were some very exciting companies throughout the journey that we invested directly in, and those were very well-established companies, global companies. So it was different. But let me just give you a brief history of how we started investing, what we decided to do, and where we stand today. About 4 years ago, my father, he's a great entrepreneur himself. Like most businessmen in Turkey, he was interested in various businesses. But when he started reading this in the world news and the Turkish news, that there's a lot of activity in the market, he asked me to look into it. And quite honestly, I wasn't thrilled about the idea because I thought this was gambling, in my opinion. And in reality, when you look at the finance or the numbers, I'm a finance background, so I can't help it. I have this, septic mentality. So it's, it was very risky and I didn't want to go in. So what I did is I booked myself 5 days of meetings with all the prominent VCs in Turkey in the same week. And I want to just, touch and feel what it is that they do and how they do it. And I said, if I'm representing the company as the CEO, and if I have my own personal stake in the company, I'd like to minimize my risk. So in order to minimize, I understood that there are different stages of this investment, like you mentioned, pre-seed, seed, Series A, and then growth, so on. So I decided to do just like a finance person would do, diversify my risks. And just like Ece mentioned, instead of doing one investment, I'd like to spread, not pray, but spread the investments, So basically, I met really interesting and nice people along the way. And these people are smart, educated, talented. Some of them are lucky, and some of them were unlucky, but some of them were, had good teams. So I started investing with a handshake. We just said, okay, let's go, let's try it. And I said, how much am I willing to lose? And what would be the number that would make me feel safe or comfortable sleeping at home and not worry about this money? And that's how I started. So my father said, for example, 5. I said, okay, let's try with 1. So, I just wanted to be even on the safer side. But as you go along, when you start investing and the paperwork starts coming in and you start reading reports and you understand the dynamics and you understand the stories, you understand the market changes, you understand the trends, you understand which sectors are interesting, which sectors are not interesting. And you understand that it's actually a bit of, I'd like to give an example of another investment that we do. For example, we invest in wine business, spirits, okay, whiskey and wine in England and Scotland. We buy cases, we buy casks of whiskey, and then we bottle them after 5 years, and then we sell. So, as you can imagine, you cannot know and you cannot possibly taste all these kinds of varieties. So what we do is that we wanted to take a little portfolio, and somebody there said something very smart. So that applies to VC. That's why I wanted to mention it, is that, take your time with investments and do it as a vintage investment. So you can invest every year or every season a certain amount of money. You can have a budget, you can have a roadmap, and then you can dissect the sectors. So we started putting our investments on a map and said, where do we need to invest? For example, we did not have any investments in Africa. Then we started investing in Africa. We did not have any investments in the Northern European countries. Then we started investing in those countries. And then we started selecting, sectors. Today, I have a very updated list. We are into 258 investments. And these are in 35 countries. 27 countries and 35 sectors. And of course, the most popular sectors are gaming, fintech, healthcare, pharmaceuticals, and logistics. So, there are various sectors in the field. And as we went along and as the funds progressed, we started understanding what is it that they do and how is it that they do. So a general, I mean, in Turkey, of course, I invested with 212, and then I invested with Revo, Simya, Founder One under Entrepreneurship Network, 500 emerging markets, which used to be called 500 Istanbul, I guess. And in the world, you know, we started to invest in very prominent names like Silver Lake and all the other funds that you can think of, the popular names. But, you know, you sort of understand that a lot of these funds globally look at very similar companies. So you don't want to double dip in similar businesses all the time. So we try to stay away from the same strategy over and over again. So we try to, you know, have a distinction between, you know, who is investing in growth, who is investing in seed, who is investing in more big ticket items or industries like we've never been to. For example, we have invested in aviation and aerospace in SpaceX. We have direct investments into some companies in the US. We have about 91 companies in the US that we invested, and 4 of which are direct investments. And those are very wild and perhaps aggressive investments, but this is a portion of the portfolio that we were willing to risk. And if you want to know how it works, the VC world is, you know, I know that some of you might have this question, why would you do it? I understand, but for us, you have to understand, this is not our business. Our business is to make money in our own business, which is real estate, renewable energy, and more traditional businesses. But, you know, when you put your money into investment, you'd like to diversify even the risk that you take. I mean, not just in general terms, but this is no different than going to a casino. But this is a very educated investment strategy. You know, it's because at the end of the day, the people who are going to make money are the people who run these companies. I mean, of course, the system has to be right, the model has to be right, the team has to be right, the regulation should be allowing you to make money. But at the end of the day, it's the driving force of these investments are people like us or like you, that they're going to be persistent in their decisions or strategies over a long period of time, or maybe a short period of time, and then sell to the next competitor because the market is very active. We've seen a lot of exits throughout the process as well. Generally, you share your, of course, in return of this diversification of the risk, you basically share the profits with your fund that you're working. For example, you know, you pay a management fee yearly, and then you know, after a certain period of time, when you make a profit, you give generally it's about 20%. You give 20% of your profit to the funds that actually found and brought you these opportunities, because you may not have possibly the time to monitor them. You may not have possibly the time to find the deal and bring it to you. So there is a finder's fee, and there is a profit sharing. You know, all these are part of the business, and I think these are very acceptable numbers. It's very traditional. Even if you go to a hedge fund today, if you wanted to invest in finance, if you wanted to buy a bond portfolio or an equity portfolio, you would still share those profits because, again, it's out there. But it's easy to say after you found it or you made the investment, but it's very difficult to find these investments and also to nurture these investments as they're progressing with their businesses. So that's where we stand with that. And the period works like this. Basically, you invest your money for 5 years or 10 years sometimes, so you're locked up. And the fund holds capital as they need it. They don't ask you to invest the money all at once. So they give you capital calls, and then you slowly invest the money over a long period of time. And then they may have an additional 1 to 2 years, or sometimes up to 3 years extensions where you're locked in. So for some of you, it might be very claustrophobic, but again, I'm telling you, it's something that you should take a little portion of your income where you think you lost it, and you basically forget about it. You just keep reading the reports as they come along. No matter how exciting it is, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, you will only know at the very end of the process whether you made money or you lost money. but this will be a great education. I strongly recommend it for everybody. I mean, in Turkey, there's a lot of activity, and as far as I know, I think the official number is about 246 funds, including the GSYF funds in Turkey. I mean, the number is tremendous. And just over the, what's the number it was last year? I don't know. Was it 94? It was just established last year, right? Yes. 94. The number is staggering. I mean, 94 funds or companies formed as a vehicle just in 2022. I mean, the numbers have come down. The deal flow and the deal numbers are down, but it's because globally it's a bit inflated. But it will come around. You know, things change like in every industry. But I do recommend it to everybody. I think it's a nice way of gambling. Instead of going to a casino, you make a nice investment here, and it's more educated, and you learn along the process. So if you have a tendency to play online gambling, I would suggest you steer towards here. That's my thought.
A few things that you have mentioned, I think these are important for the class. About the business model, you know, the capital calls, I just want to underline them again. You know, once an investor decides to invest in a VC, they don't pay all the money at once, but they're paying as the VC calls the money, which means as the VC invests in new startups. This is an important aspect of the business model here. Yeah. And also the management fee and success fee. Now, management fee is you're paying the venture capital anyway, you know, just if for managing your money. Yeah. And then if they succeed in their investments and have a return, then they get the success fee, which is called carry is the right word for that, right?
Carried interest, yeah.
And then they get carried interest on that. And Selma, would you add something on this since you're unmuted?
Yeah. For GSYF, we have a different structure that we don't do capital calls. We get the investment money by our closing. So it's a very different strategy we are having right now. Since Polat Bey mentioned, there are a lot of GSYFs founded last year, but I think the successful ones will remain. And some of them is founded for just to invest only in one startup. So they have different structure, but it's a very nice thing that the ecosystem is widening in terms of the number of GSYFs, and startups are now choosing the VCs they would like to get investment. So it's a nice thing.
Yeah. It's crazy for me. I started working in startup ecosystem 13 years ago, which was, you know, it didn't really exist at that time.
Yeah.
There were only one fund or none, you know, probably GBA was active. So it's unbelievable to see this growth in Turkey.
Yeah, when we would like to organize for example, what is VC or VC, and it's, I don't know, it's objective, some kind of seminar in ODTÜ Çekirdek before, we couldn't find any VC that time. So from that time on, here right now, we have a lot of VCs and with a lot of experience. So it's a very nice thing that the startups should go and ask for that experience, even if they are not looking for investment right now.
Yeah, that's great. Polat, here's a question which I was hoping that someone would ask, Hakan asked, and this is, I think, kind of related. You could reply it, kind of related to your claustrophobic 5 to 10 year luck. He asked, how do macroeconomic factors affect your investment decisions? Like there might be a potential increase in the interest rates in Turkey. Would you consider to tighten your portfolio to lower risk? Sorry.
I think it's an excellent question. Thank you very much. I think this question applies to any kind of investment that you do. Yes, I would definitely say a little break perhaps would be in order. But on the other side, you know, my strategy is, you know, personally, I believe that, you know, this is something that I learned from my finance background. You know, the time I was in the stock market, I was also making trades for very prominent banks. And you know, it doesn't matter when you get in, when you don't, but it's the time you have to stay in the market. You know, it's sort of like, you know, you have to stay for the long haul anyways. So things change, you know, over a long period of time, always, sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse. But my suggestion is keep investing, whether it be little or a lot, in your opinion, but keep investing, because the opportunity, you don't know. Sometimes you think you know that it was a good time not to invest, and then you lose out on certain deals that you never thought it would be successful. I mean, who would have thought Getir is going to be, you know, a $12 billion company? I would have never thought. I'm just praying that they would never go bankrupt. Honestly, you know, I never thought, you know, this would be the case. Or, you know, someone would argue, you know, who would have thought Elon Musk is going to be successful in all these deals that he did? The guy is crazy. But, you know, look, he went to buy Twitter. I lost sleep over it. You know, I'm telling you, like, it's the most bothersome news I've ever received in the last 10 years. Because why would you invest in Twitter, where you have a very profitable business in your own hands? And so, you know, yes, of course, fundamentally, I agree with macroeconomic developments. You have to monitor closely what you invest in. So invest something that is not going to hurt you over the long term, but be consistent. You know, stay in the market. Don't change your mind too quickly. I know in Turkey we're not used to this, because in Turkey we evaluate everything in 3 to 6 months periods. You know, we don't have the so to say, a very sustainable policy in government or in finance or in politics. So it's very hard to make long-term decisions, but you can make your own decisions. You know, you can stay in the market for a long period of time, and you can invest perhaps in smaller ticket items. That's what I think. But yes, fundamentally, yes, I agree. Macroeconomic changes definitely affects your decision making in business, but that's for your day-to-day business.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks a lot. There is one more question that I will ask Polat, and then I'll ask Selma, because I know it affects both sides. Is there any effect of government incentives on your investments?
No, actually, what we did is we started investing with an offshore entity that we have. We're also we have also foreign residency, so it's not affecting anything in Turkey, let's say. But that's something that is more about tax planning. But after that, we realized that we would like to bring it onshore. So we started forming a company under our Gülman group. It's called Gülman Ventures. And then we extended another arm, which owns a company in Sweden. There are some tax treaties that are advantageous, just like Holland and Turkey, bilateral tax treaties. And the Swedish company is owned by this Turkish company here. So, of course, if you can make it more tax efficient, it is better, because at the end of the day, you may be hit with some losses, or you may be hit with great profits. So nobody wants to pay too much taxes at the end of the day when they make too much money. So you have to think both sides, you know. But we don't invest because somebody's giving us an incentive. That's not our business model.
Mm-hmm.
Can I ask a question in here?
Sure.
One of the things that I've kind of been running into is that some of the investors in these funds has been reconsidering their percentage investments.
Mm-hmm.
Because typically they say, I know, put maximum 5% or something like that, so that you don't start worrying about, oh, what if this disappears? But now that the other investments have started to lose value, mm-hmm. sometimes the VC portions have gotten bigger than they had originally planned.
Yes.
Have you been doing any rebalancing as a result of something like this?
You know, I wasn't presented with an opportunity yet, but I did think about it. You know, sometimes I want to increase my investments in certain, you know, funds, but, you know, you can't make any shifts in the middle. But you know, when I started investing, at first I realized that the investments were too small, and then I realized, you know, some of them we started making bigger ticket investments. Then I realized that we are very small in a very large fund, so it felt very good actually. So, but when you're too big in a small fund, actually that's dangerous, I think, in my opinion. I don't want to be more than a certain percentage in any fund, but rather than the percentage, I look at the amount of money that would make me feel comfortable investing for a long term. So invest and forget, you know. But there are some opportunities that the funds came with, for example, through an SPV. They said, would you like to double dip because there's another potential capital demand, but it's not going to go through the fund. We're going to create another investment vehicle where you can invest separately. I did double invest in those. For example, with 212, we invested in Çuç AI. It's a Turkish AI company that's based in US, I believe. And for example, those opportunities present themselves. And sometimes, yes, we'd like to double dip on those.
Just a little explanation. SPV is a special purpose vehicle. It's like building a small, it's not a fund, it's not a fund or a company, you know, it's just built for investing in a startup only for one time. So that's how
it's a special purpose vehicle, just because it's that exactly one time investment, one type of partnership deal.
Okay, so the same question for Selma. It doesn't have to be the government incentives, but I know that there's the new law and regulation behind the foundation of Simya. We can start with that and continue with the other questions.
I was actually going to explain that incentive. We are not affected by incentives in our investments, but our investors are actually joined our fund last year because of a government incentive. Are you familiar with the concept of technopark companies? They are benefiting from corporate taxes, income taxes, and other taxes while they are continuing their R&D in technoparks, or being a own entity like R&D centers. They are under a special article regulation. So the regulation said to that companies, when you are benefiting from these incentives like income or corporate taxes, and when you are getting 1 million Turkish lira extra benefit, you are going to invest 2% of it to a GSYF fund. In order to not to pay any corporate taxes, and in order to continue benefiting from that benefit. So a lot of R&D companies joined our fund because of that incentive. But I found this incentive very important because those R&D companies and the companies in Technopark have a very fresh memory of becoming global companies, and also maybe get an investment from a VC or elsewhere. So it created a lot of mentoring opportunities with the companies we are investing and the investors. So I think it was very beneficial, but it also created a kind of investors that do not know any investment and they are not dealing or they are not caring anything about investment strategy. So in a way, we went to those companies and we created awareness how to become an investor, how to invest according to investment strategy. So it was a very important process, but sometimes this was done just for being a regulation, but sometimes the investors were so knowledgeable and they done their investments according to that know-how. But it was a very important process, I think, that affected our Simya fund.
Thanks a lot. And there was a question about why you choose Neo Portföy as an investor. Would be good to maybe talk about the structure, Neoport first role, what's
Again, I don't want to bother you with the Turkish regulation and another terminology, but for being a girişim sermayesi yatırım fonu in Turkey, you need to have a asset management company. And Neoport was a boutique and very have a unique know-how on SPK relations. It's a capital markets board in Turkey, the upper body that also regulates us. So we choose them as being our asset management company, and we are working with them because they were boutique. And sometimes some asset management companies also would like to have more rights in terms of decisions, investment decisions. But now we have a very democratic and independent structure. So we decided to work with Neoport.
Polat, please go on with what you're going to add to Hakan's question.
Sorry, I just wanted to add something to Hakan's question. I forgot to mention, sometimes in the funds, even if you don't decide to not continue investing for the funds that you're already invested, because of these market discrepancies or the market changes, the companies that they work with, they need sudden cash, or they need some business expansion plans outside of Turkey or some other markets or another segment of a business that they need to finance. And if things are going well, the fund managers, the VC fund managers, in any case, they invest further into a company. So instead of you taking those opportunities, the fund takes it on your behalf in any case. So even if I say I don't want to invest any further this year or next year or for the moment, there may be opportunities like that. And those sometimes are very beneficial for the overall performance of the fund. And that's something to add to that too. I just want you to know, because it does happen without you.
And
even
also, Polat Bey, I think global trends also affects, because when we just consider the world without pandemic, we wouldn't have seen that last mile delivery companies or edtech companies or logistic companies or e-commerce companies have got investment that much, as you mentioned, Getir's case. And also, as being a fund manager, we have a limited and short time of periods for investment. So we are not like here just to keep the money to ourselves and not to invest. We should done this investment in every macro or microeconomic factors are going, but we are in a way adjusting our investment decisions accordingly to that trends or factors, because we are not in a way to keep the money to ourselves and not to invest in any startup.
You're right.
Selma, there was a question in the beginning that would investment companies invest to startups that are competitors? Investments are made by different companies in this example, of course.
Generally, I think companies are unlikely to invest in their competitors, but there are also some opportunities to invest in complementary trends. For example, you are a last mile delivery company and you are going and looking for a company who's doing, I don't know, maybe in payment system, who's working for a payment system. You can have a strategic partnership, or you can just, this company can exit to you. So there are some examples that I have seen, and ODTÜ Çekirdek company, I think in 2 or 3 weeks ago, has acquired a very small startup. I don't know the sector, but the startup was from EdTech. So they, I think, acquire a startup from doing a kind of parental activities or events. So these kind of things, these complementary services can go together. But I don't see any example that a competitor acquires another one in Turkey, if I'm not wrong. Maybe Polat Bey can have that kind of examples?
One example is I lived myself through it. For example, I am invested in Revo as well, and they invested in Getir when they were at 800 million valuation. This is when I entered that investment. And do you remember there was a company called Gorilla? Was it named?
Yeah. Gorilla.
Yeah. So they approached us through another bank from Europe, and they said, would you like to invest? But effectively, they're doing the same thing. Okay. So Getir and Gorilla are actually direct competitors. And they were fighting for Germany's market at the time. Okay. And I, instinctively, I called Cenk Bayraktar from Revo, and I said, listen, these guys approached me. I'm not in your business, but I would like to know, how do you see them? And what do you think? Because I don't want to, invest in the same type of business just to distribute my risk, because I don't know who does what exactly. And I know that Getir at the time was already much bigger than Gorillas. And he said something very striking to me, and which I got, actually, at that point, I got worried. And he said, listen, I don't know about Gorillas, but if we go out of business, everybody will be out of business. So I said, okay, I understand. I got the message, so I'm not investing. And then at the end of the day, it was a year after that conversation, Getir bought Gorillas. So, they did it to go into the German market fast, but I think it was a very expensive deal. And perhaps they had to do it. Maybe it was a good decision after all. I would never know. But I'm very glad I didn't invest in Gorillas at the time. So, but it does happen, yes. There was a question. The second part of the question was for me, I believe. Can I go ahead and answer that?
Yeah, please.
Somebody asked, which sectors do you think it would bring profit in addition to current trends when investing in startups? Well, right now, because of the macroeconomics going back to the same thing, dynamics, I would say that healthcare sector and pharmaceuticals are great investments because they're defensive investments for inflationary trends. And usually, I'm talking globally, not just Turkey, but like especially in the US. Those are the sectors that perform well. When I say healthcare, it could be assisted living. It could be any kind of oncology startups that find cures or services in the labs. And those companies, we do have investments heavily in pharmaceuticals and healthcare as well. But for the moment, logistics in Turkey is a big trend. It's been for a long time already, but I think that will continue. I would think. Fintech and gaming, of course, is a very popular trend, although I'll be careful because there's too many players in the market now. But I would say healthcare, definitely, and pharmaceuticals.
Thank you. And part of the question was for Selma, by the way. Selma, the question from Hassan was, do you have specific model or criteria to evaluate the risk sharing between investors and startups?
Yeah. As being an early stage investors, I think we are take more risk in that sense. But I think this due diligence process, as I mentioned before, is kind of seeing that kind of risks, whether you want to take or not. So, for example, we are looking deeply the financials of the startups. We are making reference checks. We are having call with the customers. They are giving the names, for example. Sometimes a customer can say that I'm not satisfied with the product that startups is having. So that kind of questions are always asked to the startup and the customers they are having. And also we are looking at their legal documents just to see that an IP related right is given to another corporate or another body. So I think this due diligence process is there for to see the risk you may take or not, but in a way you are giving a decisions according to risk you see. but you are always believing in high potential, high growth potential, and potential in return. So there are a lot of methodologies we are using, but in a way we are just being satisfied with the risk we are taking and we are investing.
There's a comment from Alper. I think this is about investing or investing in competitors or buying each other. Right, Alper? He says then one of the companies will inevitably become advantageous in terms of financial investments. Am I right? Probably.
It totally depends, you know. I mean, it depends on, you know, the target company that is being bought out. If they're strong in a certain market, just like in the case of Getir and Gorilla, for example, it was a good move because they wanted to have a fast introduction to the German market. But I don't know what type of loans or business commitments they had when they bought the company. So you may not be necessarily in a financially advantageous position when you buy out a company because you don't know. I mean, an investor, like silent investor, LP, you know, limited partners, would never know what kind of entangled business deals that it may come with. But it may be good because in Getir's strategy, they wanted to be in Europe, and Germany's market is very important. So it was probably the best way to enter, or a cheaper way to enter, let's say. But maybe it wasn't a very financially sound decision.
Yeah, I think every startup has a special case, but as Alper, you mentioned, yes, sometimes for example, in Getir's case, not any other startups can be that much dominate other countries or get that much high investment and fast as Getir. So in a way, Getir's case is a special one in terms of the investment they get and the timing they have. Remember the pandemic time, and they were there, so their timing was so important. So we need to consider every startup's case a special case in that. But for some startups, this is a true comment.
Can I use a little time for advertisement?
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay, great. I want to tell you all, you know, since you're all students and like to read, this is my father's book that we recently published. It's on sale in bookstores, and the receipts go to Turkey Eğitim Vakfı. This is his book about 70 years in business, and you know, since he's a great entrepreneur as well, there are great stories. My father, just to give you a little recap, he came from nothing. You know, he didn't inherit wealth just like I did from my dad, but he had nothing when he started. So for whoever is out there, you know, trying to start life with lots of challenges, you can, I'm sure, relate to a lot of these things, the stories in his book. It's a very easy read. It's not boring. I'm not saying it's because of my dad, but unfortunately, most of these biographies of business people, they have a tendency to be very boring, and you can't read it. It doesn't flow. But this one is a very fun read. And if you also pick up a piece of the Oxygen newspaper today, you will see a column where his book is being advertised, and you can read a little bit about the stories there for the next 4 weeks. I highly recommend it. So that's a bit of my advertisement. Thank you.
So I can add a reader's review to this, you know, so under the advertisement. No, I really found it really easy to read, by the way. And I totally agree. When I first read it, I was a bit worried because I wanted to read it because it's Polat's father. But, you know, I thought it may be boring, but it's really, really short stories kind of thing, like a novel. So, and a lot of insight in it. I really enjoyed it.
Good. Thank you very much.
So I think we came to the end of our class. Just some last words from Selma, and then to Polat.
And so I'm so thankful to you, Adil Hocam and Ece, for this opportunity. And it's been a pleasure to have this session with Polat Bey. Thank you so much. I learned so much from you with that session. Thank you.
Thank you. I also appreciate it, Selma Hanım. It's very nice to meet you for the first time here. And thank you for your presentation. It was really nice, well prepared. And I thank everybody for participating this morning. And Adil Hocam, thank you very much for facilitating us in your class. It's a great honor to be here, especially in ODTÜ's umbrella. It's very prestigious education school, so it's an honor. And Ece, thank you very much for the organization and all the prep work for us.
I thank you. I think we have to do this in person next year, hopefully.
Hopefully.
And it's much easier to make people talk about VCs and, you know, investment. It's so difficult to explain it when you're telling it as a third person story, but it was great to hear from both of you the both sides of the game. So, Adil Hocam.
And plus, it's also great for networking when we're face to face, because I'm sure that in the audience we have people that would like to meet you guys and maybe chat with you guys. But obviously online, that's not going to be very easy. And plus, when we're face to face, typically we're able to go out for some coffee or tea afterwards. So I'll send you a link with a picture of a glass of chai in a little while, unfortunately for this time. But I look forward to meeting you in person as well. Selma, I think you had something to say?
Yeah, I'm here putting my email address just to talk with the entrepreneur candidates or who would like to learn more about VC and the ecosystem. I'm here to help.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, guys. And for the students among us, we will see you next week on Wednesday. Some of you in class, some of you online. So thanks for attending. Görüşmek üzere.